What happens when our desperate search for a savior blinds us to the truth? Throughout history, people have turned to powerful figures for hope. Leaders, visionaries, even so-called geniuses, believing they alone can guide us to a better future. But as physician and author Arthur Dykman warned in his book The Wrong Way Home, uncovering the patterns of cult behavior in American society, people seek security and certainty by surrendering critical thinking to authority figures, creating fertile ground for cult-like dynamics. This isn't just about isolated fringe groups. It's about how we choose our heroes, how we invest in them, and what we're willing to ignore in the process. One of the most striking examples today is Elon Musk. To his followers, he's an innovator, a genius, a man single-handedly shaping the future. But is this really the truth? In this video, we'll break down the carefully constructed myths surrounding Musk, how his so-called brilliance is built on the work of others, how his fan base exhibits cult-like devotion, and how his growing alliance with political extremists reveals a more calculated agenda. We'll also explore the deeper psychological and spiritual lessons at play, why we fall for saviors, how cult dynamics shape public perception, and what we can learn to break free from these illusions. Because in the end, the question isn't just about Elon Musk. It's about why we keep looking for a messiah in the first place. We've all heard it. Elon Musk, the genius entrepreneur who revolutionized space travel, transformed the auto industry, and redefined online payments, our real-world Tony Stark. But what if I told you that much of this narrative is a carefully crafted illusion? Let's start with SpaceX. While Musk is credited with its success, the real engineering mastermind behind the company was Tom Mueller, who developed the engines that made it possible. Musk provided funding and business direction, but he didn't invent the technology that sent rockets to space. The same pattern repeats with PayPal. It wasn't Musk's innovation. It was created by Max Levchin and Peter Thiel's company Confinity. Musk's X.com, not to be confused with X that took over Twitter, merged with it, and soon after he was pushed out. Yet he still takes credit for it. And then there's Tesla, a company Musk didn't even found. That credit belongs to Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning, real engineers who developed the technology. Musk came in with funding, forced Eberhard out, and rebranded himself as the visionary behind electric cars. But here's the kicker. Tesla vehicles aren't even good for the environment. The lithium and cobalt mining needed for the batteries fuels human rights abuses, electric vehicles still rely on fossil fuels, and let's not forget Musk's infamous words, "We will coup whoever we want. Deal with it." Mining for those resources is destroying the environment. As cult expert Margaret Thaler Singer once noted in her book, Cults in Our Midst, cults thrive on deception, whether by hiding the truth or creating myths that exaggerate the leader's capabilities. Musk's image as a lone genius is a textbook example of this. It's not about facts, it's about perception. The media and Musk's devoted followers desperately want a tech savior, and they're willing to ignore reality to keep that dream alive. But this isn't just about myth making. There's something deeper happening. Later in this video, we'll look at how Musk is using Twitter, or X, as a vehicle to align himself with right-wing extremists and silencing opposing voices. And that's not even the most sinister part. Stay with me, but first, we must understand the cult-like behavior of Musk's follower base. It's one thing to admire a public figure, but what happens when the admiration turns into devotion? Blind, unquestioning, and aggressive. Stephen Hassan, an expert on cult psychology, developed the BITE model, which outlines how cult leaders control their followers through behavior, information, thought, and emotion. And when you apply it to Elon Musk's fan base, the patterns are unmistakable. Behavior control? Just try to criticize Musk online. His most devoted followers will pile on with harassment, mass reporting, and relentless attacks, often mimicking the tactics of political extremists. Information control. The narrative surrounding Musk is carefully curated. His fans aggressively push the idea that he's a selfless innovator, saving humanity from itself, despite his track record of profiting off government subsidies and exploiting workers. Thought control. Any negative news about Musk is dismissed as jealousy, fake news, or a smear campaign by the so-called mainstream media. To his followers, he is infallible, a misunderstood genius who can do no wrong. And then there's emotional control. Musk constantly dangles grand, utopian promises, a future where we colonize Mars, merge with AI, and escape the control of big government. His fans cling to these dreams, ignoring his failures. But when criticism mounts, the tone shifts. His base is fed fear and paranoia, convinced that his enemies, regulators, journalists, or even the public are trying to destroy progress. What we see pretty much is that Musk's followers are attaching their identity onto these promises. They want this utopian society to happen. They want to be taken care of. But this attachment is what's blinding them to the reality. Hassan warns that cult leaders manipulate not just what people do, but how they think and feel. And Musk's fandom is a textbook case. Take, for example, the conspiracy theory that Musk is secretly fighting against the deep state. His followers claim that his moves, like buying Twitter, are part of some grand plan to restore free speech and expose government corruption. Musk has banned journalists, silenced critics, and collaborated with governments to censor content. The myth persists because it gives his fans a sense of belonging, purpose, and a reason to defend him at all costs. And that's the danger. When a billionaire sells you a dream, and you're willing to attack anyone who questions it. Elon Musk presents himself as a free speech absolutist, but his actions tell a different story. In reality, Musk is aligning himself with far-right figures, using Twitter and X to amplify conspiracy theories and suppress dissent. Take his interactions with Tucker Carlson, a figure notorious for pushing white nationalist rhetoric. Musk's engagement with Carlson and others like him is not random, it's strategic. He's cultivating a new audience, one that thrives on fear, outrage, and a manufactured sense of persecution. And what about those who challenge him? He bans them. Journalists who expose his failures? Gone. Even Matt Taibbi, the very reporter Musk once championed with the Twitter files, was thrown under the bus the moment he stopped serving Musk's narrative and for having a Substack, rather than using X payments alone. But here's the bigger picture. Musk has always been a grifter, shifting his persona to fit whatever sells. When it was profitable, he played the role of a liberal environmentalist, selling Tesla as a climate-saving revolution while benefiting from billions in government subsidies. Then he saw where the cultural winds were blowing and reinvented himself as an anti-woke champion. His ties to the Trump administration were deeper than he lets on. While publicly posturing as a critic of Trump, Musk sat on advisory councils, working behind the scenes to secure government contracts for SpaceX and Tesla. His entire empire was propped up by public money, yet he now poses as a self-made visionary who stands against government interference. And let's talk about how he used the Joe Rogan experience to push his grift. Every time he appeared, he carefully curated an edgy, rebellious persona, acting like an outsider while using the platform to sell everything from Tesla stocks to his grandiose visions of colonizing Mars. He understood exactly how to manipulate Rogan's audience, who were primed to believe that a billionaire tech mogul smoking weed on camera must be one of them. But where has this all led? To Musk openly throwing up a Nazi salute on stage, and his followers making excuses for it. As Alexandra Stein explains in her book, Terror, Love, and Brainwashing, totalitarian systems use fear and love to keep followers trapped. Musk plays both sides, praising his loyalists while convincing them they are under attack from a shadowy enemy. And while Musk's public antics get all the attention, his real power is behind the scenes, aligning himself in a public-private partnership with the US government at the expense of our taxpayer dollars and innocent lives. Starlink, SpaceX's satellite internet service, supposedly controlled entirely by Musk, became a key tool in the Russia-Ukraine war. A conflict that, like all wars, serves the wealthy while devastating ordinary people and the planet. Both sides relied on tech funded by billionaires and governments with their own agendas. This alignment was not for peace, but for his own interests. This isn't about freedom or democracy, it's about power, profit, and the ability to control global conflicts. This is the kind of unchecked power we're dealing with. It's not just about Twitter memes or electric cars. It's about one man positioning himself as a global gatekeeper for communication, finance, and even warfare. And the most sinister part, Musk's real goal is to turn X into a financial platform, a banking system where users store and transfer money. If he succeeds, he won't just control the flow of information, he'll control people's financial lives. Imagine a world where criticizing Musk means losing access to your own money. We've already seen platforms deplatform users for political reasons. Now imagine if your entire livelihood was tied to a platform run by a thin-skinned billionaire with a history of silencing critics. This is not just about ideology. It's about power, control, and the construction of a system where obedience is rewarded and dissent is punished. Why do so many people abandon critical thinking when following a so-called visionary? Arthur Dykman observed that humans have a deep need for certainty, often at the cost of skepticism. That's why we're drawn to leaders who claim to have all the answers, especially in chaotic times. But as Margaret Thaler Singer warned, cults thrive on deception. Musk's followers aren't just loyal, they've been conditioned to trust him, even when he contradicts himself or fails to deliver. His mix of half-truths and carefully crafted PR keeps them invested. And then there's Alexandra Stein's insight. Cult leaders use a fear-love dynamic to keep followers dependent. Musk positions himself as both a benevolent genius and the last defense against woke mind virus enemies. But real leadership doesn't demand submission, it fosters independence. The question is, are we willing to see through the illusion? Elon Musk presents himself as a savior, a genius innovator leading humanity into the future. But what happens when we look past the myth? Broken promises litter his career. Tesla's so-called full self-driving is still riddled with failures, and Mars colonization remains a distant fantasy. Ethical concerns paint a darker picture. Allegations of worker mistreatment at Tesla and SpaceX contradict his public image. And then there's false altruism. Musk's so-called philanthropy often serves as little more than PR, boosting his brand rather than genuinely helping people. Don't confuse charisma with competence. The more we deify figures like Musk, the more we give them unchecked powers. And history has shown that that never ends well. When analyzing figures like Elon Musk and his devoted followers, we can draw 4 important lessons from cult psychology and spiritual teachings that help us understand the dynamics of such a powerful following. These 4 lessons not only allow us to assess the nature of these leaders, but also empower us to think critically about the movements they inspire. First, it's essential to recognize the warnings of manipulative leaders. Look for the red flags. Cult leaders often exploit our innate desire for connection and purpose, and they use these vulnerabilities to control and dominate. The key to protecting ourselves is developing strong critical thinking skills and maintaining personal autonomy. We must be careful not to get swept up in the narrative they create, which often prioritizes blind loyalty over independent thought. By being vigilant and questioning the intentions of those in power, we avoid falling into the trap of unquestioning allegiance. Next, educating ourselves about cult psychology. This is a powerful way to understand how these dynamics work. Understanding the tactics used to manipulate followers can help us recognize when we're being influenced in unhealthy ways. Books like The Wrong Way Home by Arthur Dykman, Combating Cult Mind Control by Stephen Hassan, Cults in Our Midst by Margaret Thaler Singer, and Terror, Love, and Brainwashing by Alexandra Stein provide deep insights into the methods cults use to gain and maintain control. Knowledge is power, and when we learn about these psychological tactics, we arm ourselves against being manipulated. It's also critical to educate ourselves on politics and history. Leaders like Musk don't exist in a vacuum. Understanding the social and historical context helps us see how such figures can rise to prominence. Awareness and the broader political landscape give us the tools to critically analyze the power structures that support and enable their influence. This will help us recognize why figures like Elon Musk are attaching themselves so closely to the government now. And I shouldn't just say now, because this has been going on for a while now, seeing how Elon Musk was using Starlink for warfare with the government. And now that he's working so closely with the Trump administration, taking advantage of the cult-like following that Trump has, and that he himself, Elon, has, this is going to manufacture consent for people to allow our country to move more towards a right-wing society, giving corporations more and more power, stripping that power away from working class people. And if Musk was aligning himself with the Democrats, and like how he was before when he was presenting himself as a liberal environmentalist, then I would be calling that out too, and we should also notice that. Just like we see how Zuckerberg was once aligning himself with Democrats, and now he's aligning himself with Republicans. At the end of the day, these two parties are owned by the same people. They just use different tactics based on where the cultural winds are blowing at the time. Lastly, understand that you are your own hero. No one else will save you other than yourself. On a deeper spiritual level, we must resist the temptation to look outside ourselves for salvation. In a culture that glorifies charismatic figures, it's easy to believe that someone else holds the key to our transformation. But true growth and change begin within. Relying too heavily on an external leader for answers can prevent us from developing our own sense of truth and inner guidance. Have trust in yourself. Have trust in the wisdom that you can manifest for yourself. This is why humility and discernment are so important. Before placing our trust in someone, we need to ask ourselves, are they genuinely helping us grow? Or are they pushing us away from our own personal power and understanding? Because they're in it for their own self-interest and they're deceiving us. This is something that's been going on since the beginning of humanity, where tribal leaders will take advantage of the rest of the tribe. Cultivate the ability to discern authentic wisdom from manipulation, and never give away your personal sovereignty to someone else's vision of the world. Placing unchecked faith in figures like Elon Musk can be dangerous. When we elevate individuals as saviors, we surrender our own power and critical thinking. To break free, we must actively question narratives, do your own research, and resist falling into groupthink. Remember, true progress doesn't come from waiting for a savior. It comes from collective effort and shared responsibility. Now, you're not done, because you need to fully understand the psychology of cults and how this kind of influence works. So if you're interested in diving deeper, check out this video right here. Thanks for watching.